The blizzard had been howling for 3 days straight across the Montana plains when Zachary Sullivan spotted the dark shape half buried in the snowdrift. And at first he thought it was just another frozen carcass, until he saw the fabric of a woman's dress billowing in the wind. He urged his horse forward, squinting against the stinging ice crystals that felt like needles against his weathered face. February of 1884 was proving to be one of the harshest winters Montana had seen in years, and Zachary had been trying to make it back to his ranch before the storm worsened. Now, as he dismounted and trudged through knee-deep snow toward the figure, he could see long dark hair splayed across white powder, and a hand reaching out as if grasping for something that was no longer there. "Madam," he shouted over the wind, dropping to his knees beside her. She was breathing barely, her lips tinged blue and her skin pale as the snow surrounding her. He brushed the ice from her face and her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes the color of dark chocolate. "Leave me," she whispered, her voice so faint he almost missed it. "Just leave me here." Zachary felt something twist in his chest at those words, at the resignation in her tone. "Never again," he said firmly, not even sure why those specific words came out, only knowing that he meant them with everything in him. He had left someone behind once before, trusted that they would be fine, and that mistake had haunted him for 5 years. He would not make it again. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shivering form, then lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than she should be, probably had not eaten in days. Her head lolled against his shoulder as he carried her to his horse, and he could feel her weak breaths against his neck. Getting them both onto the horse took effort, but Zachary managed, settling her in front of him so he could keep her upright and share what little warmth his body still had. The wind screamed around them as he turned the horse toward the nearest shelter he knew of, an old trapper's cabin about 2 miles east. His ranch was too far. She would not make it. The ride felt like it took hours, though it was probably only 30 minutes. Zachary kept talking to her, nonsense mostly, just trying to keep her conscious. She did not respond, but occasionally her fingers would twitch against his arm, letting him know she was still with him. When the cabin finally came into view through the white curtain of snow, relief flooded through him. It was small and rough, but it had 4 walls and a roof, and that was more than the open plains offered. He dismounted carefully, keeping hold of the woman, and kicked the door open. Inside was frigid, but at least the wind could not reach them. Zachary laid her on the single cot in the corner and immediately set about building a fire in the stone hearth. His hands shook as he worked, whether from cold or something else he could not say. The kindling caught, and he fed it carefully, until flames were crackling and spreading warmth into the small space. He turned back to the woman and began the careful process of removing her wet clothing. Her dress was soaked through, nearly frozen solid in places. He kept his eyes averted as much as possible, focusing only on the practical need to get her dry and warm. He found a few old blankets in a chest and wrapped her in them, then set about removing his own wet things and hanging everything near the fire to dry. For the rest of that day and into the night, Zachary tended to her. He melted snow for water and managed to get small sips past her lips. He kept the fire burning hot and checked her breathing constantly. As the hours passed and warmth seeped back into her body, some color returned to her face. It was near midnight when she finally opened her eyes fully and looked at him with awareness. Zachary was sitting beside the cot, feeding more wood to the fire, when he felt her gaze on him. "You should have left me," she said, her voice stronger now but filled with a deep sadness. "I told you I would not," Zachary replied, meeting her eyes. "Never again." "You don't know what you have done," she said, and tears began sliding down her cheeks. "You should have let me die." Zachary moved closer, something in his chest aching at her words. "What is your name?" She was quiet for a long moment, then whispered, "Victoria. Victoria Elmore." "Well, Victoria Elmore, I am Zachary Sullivan, and I am mighty glad you are alive." He kept his voice gentle. "Whatever made you want to die out there in the snow, I can promise you it is not worth your life." "You don't understand," Victoria said, closing her eyes. "I am running from someone who will not stop looking for me. By saving me, you have put yourself in danger." "I have been in danger before," Zachary said quietly. "Who are you running from?" Victoria turned her face away. "My husband." The word hung in the air between them. Zachary felt an unexpected disappointment at hearing it, which made no sense. He had only just met this woman. "He will kill me when he finds me," Victoria continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "And he will hurt anyone who helped me. That is why you should have left me. At least then I would have died free." Zachary was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "How long have you been running?" "4 days. I took a horse from the stable in the middle of the night and just rode. I did not even know where I was going, I just knew I had to get away." She opened her eyes again and looked at him. "The horse threw me during the storm. I tried to find shelter, but everything looked the same. I just kept walking until I could not walk anymore." "What did he do to you?" Zachary asked, though part of him was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Victoria's hand moved to her side, pressing against the blanket. "Things that would make decent folks turn away in horror. Marcus Thornton is not a man you cross, Mr. Sullivan. He owns half the businesses in Virginia City and has the sheriff in his pocket. When I married him 2 years ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. He was handsome and wealthy and charming." Her voice turned bitter. "I learned quickly that the charm was only for show. Behind closed doors, he was a monster." Zachary felt anger building in his chest, a hot fury at this man he had never met. "You are safe here," he said. "The storm is not letting up, but once it does, I will get you somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe," Victoria said. "He has connections everywhere. He will find me eventually." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Zachary replied firmly. Victoria studied his face in the firelight. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Zachary looked down at his hands. 5 years ago, my younger sister told me she was in trouble. Her husband was treating her badly. I told her she was being dramatic, that she just needed to try harder to be a good wife. 3 months later, I got a telegram saying she was dead. Fell down the stairs, they said." He met Victoria's eyes. "I have spent every day since then knowing I failed her, knowing I left her when she needed me most. So no, I will never leave someone behind again. Never again." Fresh tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks. "I am so sorry about your sister." "Her name was Sarah," Zachary said. "She was 23 years old and had her whole life ahead of her." He cleared his throat. "You need to rest. We can figure out what to do when the storm passes." Victoria nodded and closed her eyes again. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Zachary sat watching the fire, his mind racing. He meant what he said, he would help her, but he had to figure out how. If this Marcus Thornton was as connected as Victoria claimed, it would not be easy to keep her hidden. The storm raged for 2 more days. During that time, Zachary and Victoria talked. She told him about her life before Marcus, how she had been a school teacher in Sacramento before moving to Virginia City to be closer to her aging mother. Her mother had passed away 6 months before Victoria met Marcus, and Victoria admitted she had been vulnerable, lonely, and Marcus had seemed like an answer to her prayers. "He was so attentive at first," she said as they shared a meager meal of hardtack and beans that Zachary had found in the cabin stores. "He would bring me flowers and take me on carriage rides. He told me I was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. I felt like I was in a fairy tale. "When did things change?" Zachary asked. "On our wedding night," Victoria said quietly. "I saw a different side of him. He was rough, cruel. When I tried to protest, he told me I belonged to him now and he could do whatever he wanted. It only got worse from there. He would get angry over the smallest things. If dinner was not perfect, if I spoke to another man, if I did not dress the way he wanted. The first time he hit me, he apologized afterward, bought me an expensive necklace, promised it would never happen again." She laughed bitterly. "But of course it did happen again, and again, until I realized the apologies were just part of the pattern." Zachary felt his fists clenching as he listened. "Why didn't the law help you?" "I tried once," Victoria said. "I went to the sheriff with bruises all over my arms. He told me that what happened between a man and his wife was none of his concern, and that I should go home and be more obedient. When Marcus found out I had gone to the sheriff, he broke 2 of my ribs." The casual way she said it, like it was just a fact of life, made Zachary's blood boil. He had grown up on a ranch in Montana, raised by a father who taught him that a real man protected those weaker than himself, that violence against women was the mark of a coward. The idea of someone systematically hurting Victoria, breaking her down bit by bit, made him sick. "You never have to go back to him," Zachary said firmly. "I give you my word on that." Victoria looked at him with something like hope in her eyes, but it was tempered with fear. "You cannot make that promise. You don't know what he is capable of." "Then let me learn," Zachary replied. On the 3rd day, the storm finally broke. The sun came out, blindingly bright against all that white snow, and the wind died down to nothing. Zachary went outside to check on his horse and found the animal had weathered the storm well in the small lean-to behind the cabin. He fed and watered the horse, then came back inside to find Victoria standing by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the transformed landscape. "It is beautiful," she said softly, "like the whole world has been made clean." Zachary came to stand beside her. "My ranch is about 15 miles south of here. Once we get there, we can figure out our next move. I have some friends who might be able to help." Victoria turned to look at him. "Why are you doing this? Really? It cannot just be because of your sister." Zachary met her gaze and felt something shift inside him. Over the past few days, as they had talked and shared that small space, he had come to admire Victoria's strength. Despite everything she had been through, there was a resilience in her, a core of steel that had not been broken. And if he was honest with himself, he found her beautiful, not just in appearance but in spirit. "Maybe it started because of Sarah," he admitted. "But now it is because I cannot stand the thought of you being hurt, because in these few days I have come to care about what happens to you." He took a breath. "I know that is probably too much to say given the circumstances, but I have never been good at hiding what I feel." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Sullivan." "Zachary," he corrected. "Please." "Zachary," she said, and something in the way she said his name made his heart beat faster. "I am still married. Even if I have run away, the law still considers me Marcus's wife." "The law is not always right," Zachary said. "Sometimes people have to make their own justice." They left the cabin later that morning, both dressed in their now dry clothes. The ride to Zachary's ranch was slow going through the deep snow, but the horse was strong and they made steady progress. Victoria sat in front of Zachary again, and he tried not to think about how right it felt to have her in his arms. The ranch came into view in the late afternoon. It was not much, just a small house and a barn and some corrals, but it was home. Zachary had built most of it himself over the past 6 years, after he had saved enough money working cattle drives to buy the land. "It is not fancy," he said as they approached, "but it is warm and safe." "It looks wonderful," Victoria said, and she sounded like she meant it. Zachary helped her down from the horse and led her inside. The house was cold since he had been gone for several days, but he quickly got a fire going in the hearth. There was only one bedroom, so he insisted Victoria take it while he would sleep on the couch in the main room. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Zachary tended to the ranch work, checking on his small herd of cattle and making sure they had weathered the storm. Victoria helped around the house, cooking meals and mending some of his clothes that had needed attention for months. It felt domestic and comfortable, and Zachary found himself wishing it could last. But he knew it could not. They needed a plan. Marcus Thornton would be looking for Victoria, and if what she said was true, he had the resources to search far and wide. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Zachary brought up the subject he had been thinking about for days. "I think you need to go to Canada," he said. Victoria looked up from the sock she was darning. "Canada? It is the safest place," Zachary explained. "Marcus's influence does not reach there. You could start a new life, maybe go back to teaching." Victoria set down her mending. "That would mean leaving everything behind, everyone I know." "Do you have family left here?" Zachary asked gently. She shook her head. "My mother was the last." "I have some cousins back east, but we are not close." "Then there is nothing holding you here except fear of him," Zachary said. "In Canada you could be free." "I would be alone," Victoria said quietly. Zachary took a breath. "Not if I came with you." The words hung in the air between them. Victoria stared at him in shock. "Zachary, you cannot give up your ranch, your whole life for me." "I am not giving it up for you," Zachary said, though that was not entirely true. "I am choosing a different life, one where I know you are safe. Besides, I can ranch in Canada just as well as I can here." "That is insane," Victoria said, but there was something in her eyes, a spark of hope. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Zachary replied. He moved closer to her. "Victoria, I know this is fast. I know it does not make logical sense. But these past few days with you have felt more right than anything in my life. I care about you. More than I probably should, given the situation, but I cannot help it." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I care about you too, so much that it terrifies me, but Zachary, I am not free. I am legally bound to another man. Even if we ran away together, it would not change that." "Then we get you a divorce," Zachary said. "On what grounds?" Victoria asked. "Montana law does not make it easy, especially for women, and even if I could get one, Marcus would fight it. He would never let me go willingly." Zachary was quiet for a moment, thinking. "What if he thought you were dead?" Victoria's head snapped up. "What? Think about it," Zachary said, warming to the idea. "You disappeared in the middle of the worst blizzard Montana has seen in years. If no one ever found your body, eventually he would have to accept that you died out there. He would stop looking." "But what about you?" Victoria asked. "If anyone saw us together, they would know you helped me. Marcus would come after you." "No one saw us," Zachary said. "I was alone when I found you, and we have been alone here since. As far as anyone knows, I was just holed up in my cabin waiting out the storm." He leaned forward. "We could do this, Victoria. We could disappear together and start fresh in Canada. No one would ever know." Victoria looked torn. "It would mean giving up my name. Victoria Elmore would have to die out there in that snow." "You could choose a new name," Zachary suggested. "Become someone new." "I don't know," Victoria said, wrapping her arms around herself. "It feels like running away." "It is running away," Zachary agreed. "But sometimes running is the bravest thing you can do. Sometimes survival means letting go of everything familiar and starting over." They talked late into the night, weighing the options, considering the risks. By the time they finally went to bed, no decision had been made, but Zachary could see Victoria was seriously considering it. The next morning, The decision was made for them. Zachary was outside tending to the horses when he saw riders approaching in the distance. 3 men on horseback, and something about the way they moved made his instincts scream danger. He ran back to the house. "Victoria, we have company. You need to hide." Her face went pale. "Is it Marcus?" "I don't know, but I am not taking chances." He ushered her into the bedroom and opened a trapdoor that led to a small root cellar beneath the house. "Get down there and stay quiet no matter what you hear." Victoria grabbed his hand. "Be careful." "I will," he promised, then helped her down and closed the trapdoor, covering it with a rug. He went back outside just as the 3 men rode into the yard. The one in front was tall and broad-shouldered, with slicked-back dark hair and expensive clothing that looked out of place on a ranch. His face was handsome in a cold, sharp way, and his eyes were calculating as they swept over Zachary and the property. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Zachary asked, keeping his voice neutral. The man in front dismounted. "I am looking for my wife. She disappeared from Virginia City about a week ago during the storm. I have reason to believe she might have come this way." So this was Marcus Thornton. Zachary felt his dislike crystallize into something harder. "I have not seen anyone," he said truthfully. He had not seen Victoria before finding her in the snow, so it was not technically a lie. "You are sure?" Marcus asked, his voice smooth but with an edge to it. "A woman alone, dark hair, about this tall." He held up his hand to indicate height. "Like I said, I have not seen anyone," Zachary repeated. "I have been snowed in myself, just me and my stock." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "You don't mind if we look around, do you?" Zachary did mind very much, but refusing would only make them more suspicious. "Go ahead, but make it quick. I have work to do." The 3 men dismounted and began searching. They looked through the barn, the outbuildings, and then asked to see inside the house. Zachary led them in, his heart pounding. He watched as they looked through the main room and then headed for the bedroom. "That is my private space," Zachary said, trying to sound casual. "Nothing in there but my bed and my personal effects." "Then you won't mind us looking," Marcus said, pushing open the door. Zachary held his breath as the men searched the bedroom. They looked in the wardrobe, under the bed, everywhere except the spot where the trapdoor was hidden beneath the rug. After what felt like an eternity, they came back out. "Satisfied?" Zachary asked. Marcus was staring at him intently. "I am offering a substantial reward for information about my wife's whereabouts. $1,000 to anyone who can help me find her." It was a fortune, more money than most people saw in 5 years. Zachary met his eyes steadily. "I hope you find her, but I cannot help you. If you do happen to see her," Marcus continued, "you should know that she is not in her right mind. She has been having episodes, delusions. She might say terrible things about me, but none of them are true. I just want to get her home where she can be properly cared for." Zachary had to work to keep his expression neutral. So that was how Marcus would play it if he found Victoria, claiming she was mad, that her accusations were the ravings of a sick mind. "I will keep that in mind," he said flatly. Marcus looked like he wanted to say more, but finally he just nodded and signaled to his men. They mounted up and rode off, and Zachary stood watching until they were completely out of sight. Then he rushed inside and pulled up the rug, opening the trapdoor. Victoria climbed out, her face white and her whole body shaking. "That was him. I heard his voice." Zachary pulled her into his arms without thinking, and she clung to him. "He is gone," he said. "You are safe." "For now," Victoria said against his chest, "but he will keep looking." "And that reward, Zachary, someone will eventually come forward. There are too many people who need that kind of money." Zachary pulled back to look at her face. "Then we leave, tonight. We take what we can carry and we head north." "Are you sure?" Victoria asked. "Once we do this, there is no going back." "I have never been more sure of anything," Zachary said, and he realized it was true. In the week since he had found Victoria in the snow, his entire world had shifted. He had found purpose again, something worth fighting for, someone worth fighting for. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Zachary gathered supplies, choosing carefully what they would need for the long journey north. Warm clothing, food, ammunition, blankets. Victoria packed a saddlebag with practical items, and at the last minute, she grabbed one of Zachary's shirts and a pair of his trousers. "I should travel as a man," she said. "It will be safer and less noticeable. A man and woman traveling together draws attention. Two men do not." It was smart thinking. Zachary found her a hat to tuck her hair under, and when she emerged from the bedroom dressed in his clothes, he was struck by how different she looked. Still beautiful, but in a completely different way. They left as soon as it was fully dark, taking 2 horses and a pack mule loaded with supplies. Zachary left the door to the house standing open and scattered some belongings around the yard, making it look like he had left in a hurry. Let people think what they wanted. Maybe they would assume he had been scared off by Marcus Thornton's visit. Or maybe they would think he had been robbed. Either way, it did not matter. What mattered was getting Victoria to safety. They rode through the night, heading northeast toward the Canadian border. It would take them weeks to get there, traveling carefully and avoiding towns where possible. They would have to be smart and cautious, but Zachary was confident they could make it. As dawn broke over the Montana plains, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Victoria reined her horse alongside his. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. For saving my life, for believing me, for giving up your home for me." "I am not giving it up," Zachary said. "I am trading it for something better." "What could be better than your own ranch?" Victoria asked. Zachary looked at her, at the way the rising sun caught in her dark hair, at the strength and vulnerability mixed in her expression, and he said simply, "A life with you in it." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I think I am falling in love with you, Zachary Sullivan." "I think I am falling in love with you too, Victoria Elmore," he replied, "or whoever you decide to be from now on." "I have been thinking about that," Victoria said. "What do you think of the name Violet, Violet Edwards?" "I think it is beautiful," Zachary said, "just like you." They rode on as the sun climbed higher in the sky, 2 figures on horseback heading toward an uncertain future but together. And that togetherness made all the difference. The journey north was long and difficult. They traveled mostly at night, sleeping during the day in sheltered spots off the main trails. They avoided towns when they could, and when they had to go into one for supplies, Victoria would stay back while Zachary went in alone. In her men's clothing with her hair tucked up, she could pass as a young man from a distance, but up close the disguise was less convincing. About 2 weeks into their journey, they stopped at a small settlement to resupply. Zachary left Victoria with the horses and went into the general store. He was gathering supplies when he heard men talking near the counter. "Did you hear about that woman who went missing from Virginia City?" one man was saying. "Her husband is still offering a huge reward, $1,000. "That is a lot of money," another man replied. "You would think someone would have found her by now." "They are saying she probably froze to death in that big storm," the first man continued. "Can't imagine surviving that if you were alone and on foot." Zachary paid for his supplies and left quickly. When he got back to Victoria, he told her what he had heard. "Good," Victoria said quietly. "Let them think I am dead. It makes this easier." They pushed on, traveling through the last reaches of Montana and into the wild territories beyond. The land was harsh and beautiful, mountains rising in the distance and vast stretches of forest broken by frozen rivers. They saw few other travelers, which was both a blessing and a challenge. It meant they were less likely to be recognized, but it also meant they were on their own if trouble found them. One night, about 3 weeks into their journey, they made camp in a sheltered valley. They had stopped early because Victoria was exhausted, the constant travel taking its toll. Zachary built a fire and made dinner while she rested against a fallen log, wrapped in blankets. "Tell me about your family," Victoria said as they ate. "Besides your sister, you have never mentioned anyone else." Zachary was quiet for a moment. "My ma died when I was 12. Fever took her. My pa raised me and Sarah on his own after that. He was a hard man but fair. He taught me everything I know about ranching." He stirred the fire with a stick. "He passed about 7 years ago. Heart just gave out one day while he was working. Sarah and I inherited the ranch, but she had just gotten married and moved away with her husband. I bought her out and ran it myself." "Do you miss them?" Victoria asked. "Every day," Zachary admitted. "Especially Sarah, we were close. When she married that man, I was happy for her. He seemed decent enough, had a good job at a bank. I did not see the signs that something was wrong until it was too late." His voice roughened. "By the time I realized she needed help, she was already pulling away. She stopped visiting, stopped writing. And I let her because I told myself she was just busy with her new life. Then I got that telegram and my whole world fell apart." Victoria reached over and took his hand. "It was not your fault." "I know that in my head," Zachary said, "but my heart has a harder time believing it. I should have tried harder, should have gone to see her, insisted on talking to her." "You could not have known," Victoria said gently. "These men, they are very good at hiding what they do. They are charming in public, monsters in private. And they make their victims feel like it is their fault, like they somehow deserve the abuse." She squeezed his hand. "Sarah probably thought she was protecting you by staying away. She probably thought if you knew the truth, he would hurt you too." Zachary had never thought about it that way. "You really think so?" "I know so," Victoria said. "Because that is exactly how I felt. I wanted to reach out to someone, anyone, but Marcus made it clear that if I did, he would hurt them. He told me once that if I ever tried to leave, he would track down anyone who helped me and destroy them. I believed him. He cannot hurt anyone now," Zachary said firmly. "We are beyond his reach." "I hope you are right," Victoria said softly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire. Then Victoria spoke again, her voice hesitant. "Zachary, what happens when we get to Canada?" "What is our plan?" "We find a place to settle," Zachary said. "Maybe in Alberta near Calgary. I have heard there is good ranching land up there. We can start over, build something new." "As what?" Victoria asked. "Brother and sister, business partners." Zachary turned to look at her. "What do you want us to be?" Victoria met his eyes. "I want to be your wife. Really your wife, not like I was with Marcus, but I don't know if that is even possible. I don't know if I am capable of being with someone that way after everything I have been through." Zachary reached out and cupped her cheek gently. "We will figure it out together. There is no rush, Victoria. I am not going anywhere." "Violet," she corrected with a small smile. "I need to get used to the name." "Violet," Zachary repeated. "It suits you." She leaned into his touch, and Zachary felt his heart swell with emotion. He was falling deeper in love with her every day, and the feeling was both exhilarating and terrifying. He had never felt this way about anyone before, this bone-deep certainty that she was meant to be in his life. Slowly, carefully, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft and gentle, asking rather than demanding. Violet stiffened for just a moment, and Zachary was about to pull back, but then she relaxed and kissed him back. Her hand came up to rest on his chest, and he could feel her heartbeat racing beneath his palm on her cheek. When they finally pulled apart, there were tears on Violet's cheeks. "What is wrong?" Zachary asked, concerned. "Nothing," Violet said, laughing a little through her tears. "That was just so different from anything I have ever experienced. You were gentle. You asked permission with your eyes before you even touched me. Marcus never did that. He just took." Zachary pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I will always ask," he promised. "And if you ever want me to stop, all you have to do is say so." "I did not want you to stop," Violet said against his chest. "That is what scared me. I did not think I would ever want to be touched by a man again, but with you, it is different." They held each other as the fire burned low, and Zachary felt a sense of peace settle over him. They still had a long way to go, both physically and emotionally, but they were on the right path. The last leg of their journey took another 2 weeks. As they crossed into Canadian territory, Zachary felt a weight lift off his shoulders. They were beyond Marcus Thornton's reach now, in a place where American law did not apply. Violet was safe. They made their way to Calgary, arriving in early April of 1884. The town was smaller than Virginia City, but growing, with new buildings going up and a sense of opportunity in the air. Zachary found them lodging at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Fitzpatrick. He introduced Violet as his wife, and if the older woman had any suspicions about the truth, she kept them to herself. Over the next few weeks, Zachary looked for property. He wanted land for a ranch, but also close enough to town that they would not be completely isolated. He finally found a place about 5 miles outside Calgary, 160 acres with a creek running through it and good grazing land. The price was steep but fair, and he used most of the money he had saved from selling his Montana ranch through a proxy. Moving onto their new land felt like truly starting over. They lived in a tent at first while Zachary began building a house, with Violet helping however she could. It was hard work, but good work, the kind that made you tired but satisfied at the end of each day. As spring turned to summer, the house took shape. It was larger than Zachary's old place in Montana, with 2 bedrooms and a real kitchen. He wanted Violet to have space, to feel like she had a home that was truly hers. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Violet brought up the subject they had been dancing around for months. "We should probably make this legal," she said. "If we are going to live as husband and wife, we should actually be married." Zachary looked at her. "What about your marriage to Marcus? Even if everyone thinks you are dead, you are still legally his wife in the eyes of American law." "But we are in Canada now," Violet pointed out. "And as far as Canada is concerned, Victoria Elmore Thornton does not exist. She died in a blizzard in Montana. I am Violet Edwards now, and Violet Edwards has never been married." It was a risk, but Zachary could see the logic in it. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "I am sure," Violet said firmly. "I love you, Zachary. I want to build a real life with you. I want to be your wife in every way." They were married a week later by a traveling minister who came through Calgary. It was a simple ceremony with no guests, just the 2 of them and Mrs. Fitzpatrick as a witness. Violet wore a simple dress she had sewn herself, and Zachary wore his best shirt and trousers. They exchanged vows on the porch of their new house, with the mountains visible in the distance and wildflowers blooming in the meadow. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Zachary kissed Violet with all the love and tenderness he felt, and she kissed him back with equal passion. For the first time, he felt like they were truly starting a new chapter, leaving the pain of the past behind. Their wedding night was gentle and careful. Zachary was patient, letting Violet set the pace, checking in with her constantly to make sure she was comfortable. There were moments when old fears surfaced and she tensed up, but each time Zachary would stop and hold her until she was ready to continue. By the end of the night, Violet was crying again, but this time they were tears of joy. "Thank you," she whispered as they lay in each other's arms, "for showing me that this could be beautiful, that I could feel safe and loved." "Always," Zachary promised, kissing her forehead. "I will always make you feel safe and loved." The summer passed in a blur of hard work and happiness. They expanded the ranch, buying a small herd of cattle and some chickens. Violet started a vegetable garden and proved to have a talent for growing things. Zachary built a barn and corrals, and slowly their property began to look like a real working ranch. They made friends in Calgary, cautiously at first, but eventually relaxing as they realized no one was asking too many questions about their past. On the frontier, it was common for people to be running from something, and there was an unspoken code about not prying. Zachary took work occasionally with other ranchers, helping with cattle drives or roundups, earning extra money they could put back into their own ranch. Violet, feeling more confident in her new identity, began teaching reading and writing to some of the children in town whose families could not afford to send them to the school. She did it for free at first, but word spread and soon parents were offering to pay her. She started holding classes in their barn, and Zachary would come back from working to find a handful of children gathered around her, listening intently as she read from a book or explained arithmetic. Watching her teach, seeing the passion and patience she brought to it, Zachary fell even more in love with her. She was thriving here, becoming the person she was meant to be without Marcus Thornton's shadow over her. Fall came, and with it the first anniversary of the day Zachary had found Violet in the snow. They marked the occasion quietly, both aware of how much had changed in 1 year. "Sometimes I think about that day," Violet said as they sat by the fire, "about how close I came to dying. And then I think about how you refused to let me go. You could have just ridden past. It would have been the smart thing to do, especially once you knew Marcus was looking for me." "I could never have ridden past," Zachary said. "From the moment I saw you, I knew I had to help. And from the moment I heard you speak, I knew you were going to change my life." "Did you really?" Violet asked with a smile. "Or are you just saying that because it sounds romantic?" "I really did," Zachary insisted. "There was something about you, even in that moment when you were half frozen and telling me to leave you, a strength that called to me. I think I started falling in love with you right then." Violet moved closer to him on the couch, snuggling into his side. "I fell in love with you when you said never again. There was such conviction in those words, such certainty. I had spent so long feeling worthless, like my life did not matter, and then suddenly here was this man telling me I was worth saving." Zachary wrapped his arm around her. "You were always worth saving. You just needed someone to remind you of that. That winter was easier than the previous one had been. They had a warm house, plenty of supplies, and each other. When the snows came, they would spend long evenings by the fire, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. One night in January, Violet brought up a subject that made Zachary's heart race with joy. "I want to have a baby," she said, her hand resting on his arm. "I know it is scary, and I know we have only been truly safe for less than a year, but I want us to have a family." Zachary turned to look at her, searching her face. "Are you sure?" "After everything you went through, I am sure," Violet said. "With Marcus, the thought of having his child was a nightmare, but with you it feels like the next step, the final way to truly leave the past behind and embrace our future." "Then yes," Zachary said, pulling her close. "Yes, let's have a family." By the spring of 1885, Violet was expecting. The pregnancy was not easy, and there were days when she was sick and miserable, but she was also glowing with happiness. Zachary was attentive and careful, making sure she did not overdo it and doing extra work around the ranch to make up for what she could not do. Their son was born in October, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and shook the house. The town's midwife, a capable woman named Mary, helped with the delivery while Zachary paced outside the bedroom, listening to Violet's cries and feeling completely helpless. When he finally heard the baby's first wail, he nearly collapsed with relief. Mary opened the door and beckoned him in, and he saw Violet lying exhausted in the bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "Come meet your son," Violet said softly, and Zachary moved forward on shaky legs. The baby was red-faced and squalling, his little fists waving in the air. Zachary had never seen anything more beautiful. "What should we name him?" Violet asked. Zachary thought for a moment. "What about Samuel? It means heard by God. It seems fitting given everything." "Samuel Sullivan," Violet said, testing the name. "I love it." Fatherhood changed Zachary in ways he had not expected. He had always been responsible and hardworking, but now there was a new depth to it. He was not just building a ranch, he was building a future for his son. Every fence he mended, every cow he raised, every dollar he saved was for Samuel's future. Violet was a natural mother, patient and loving but also firm when needed. She recovered from the birth quickly and went back to teaching, though now she held classes only twice a week so she could spend more time with Samuel. As Samuel grew, he became the light of their lives. His first smile, his first word, his first steps, each milestone was celebrated with joy. He had Zachary's dark hair and Violet's brown eyes, and a personality that was all his own, curious and determined. The years passed peacefully. The ranch prospered, and Zachary and Violet became respected members of the community. In 1887, they had a daughter they named Rose, and 2 years after that, another son they named Daniel. Their house was full of laughter and noise, and sometimes Zachary would stand on the porch watching his children play in the yard and Violet hanging laundry on the line, and he would feel overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built. But there was always a small part of him that worried. Worried that somehow, someday, Marcus Thornton would find them. That the past would come crashing back into their carefully constructed present. It was a worry that proved justified in the summer of 1889. Zachary had taken Samuel, now nearly 4 years old, into Calgary to pick up supplies. They were loading the wagon when a man approached them, a stranger with hard eyes and a thin mouth. "Excuse me," the man said. "I am looking for a woman who might have passed through here about 5 years ago, dark hair, pretty, about this tall." He held up his hand. "She might have been traveling with a man." Zachary felt ice run through his veins, but he kept his expression neutral. "I have lived here 5 years and I have seen a lot of women matching that description. Can you be more specific?" "Her name was Victoria Thornton," the man said. "Her husband is still looking for her. He has never given up hope that she survived that storm, and recently he got a tip that she might have headed north." "I am sorry, I cannot help you," Zachary said, turning back to his wagon. "Come on, Samuel." But the man grabbed his arm. "There is a significant reward for information. $10,000 now, if you know anything." Zachary shook off his grip. "I said I cannot help you. Now, if you will excuse me, my son and I need to get home." He lifted Samuel into the wagon and climbed up himself, his heart pounding. As they rode out of town, he glanced back and saw the man watching them, and he knew with sick certainty that this was not over. When they got home, Zachary told Violet what had happened. Her face went white. "He has found us," she whispered. "After all this time, he has found us." "He has not found us yet," Zachary said firmly. That man was just fishing, asking everyone. And even if he suspects something, we have been Zachary and Violet Sullivan for 5 years now. We have a life here, friends, a reputation. He cannot just take you." "You don't know Marcus," Violet said, clutching baby Daniel to her chest. Rose was playing at her feet, oblivious to her parents' tension. "He does not give up, ever." Over the next few days, Zachary made discreet inquiries and learned that the man was still in Calgary, asking questions. Some people remembered a couple arriving about 5 years ago, but descriptions were vague and memories unreliable. No one seemed to have made any connection between those long-ago travelers and the respectable Sullivan family. But then, about a week after the first encounter, Zachary was in town alone when he saw Marcus Thornton himself. He was older than Zachary had imagined, probably in his mid-40s, but still imposing. Well-dressed, confident, moving through the street like he owned it. And he was talking to the sheriff. Zachary's blood rang cold. He ducked into the general store and watched through the window as Marcus and the sheriff talked. Then the sheriff nodded and pointed down the street, and Zachary's heart sank. The sheriff was new to Calgary, had only been appointed 6 months ago. He did not know Zachary or Violet well, would not necessarily feel loyalty to them over an American businessman offering reward money. Zachary left his supplies and hurried to his wagon, needing to get home and warn Violet. But as he climbed into the seat, a hand grabbed his shoulder. "You are Zachary Sullivan," Marcus Thornton said. It was not a question. Zachary turned slowly. Up close, he could see the calculation in Marcus's eyes, the cold intelligence. This was a dangerous man. "I am," Zachary said evenly. "I think you have something that belongs to me," Marcus said, his voice conversational. "Or should I say someone?" "I don't know what you are talking about," Zachary replied. Marcus smiled, but it was a predator's smile. "I have been searching for my wife for 5 years. I have spent a fortune on investigators, on rewards, on travel. And then, a few months ago, I got an interesting tip. A shopkeeper in a little town in northern Montana remembered selling supplies to a man traveling with someone he thought was a young man, but might have been a woman in disguise. Around the same time my Victoria disappeared." Zachary said nothing, his mind racing. "I traced that trail north," Marcus continued. "Lost it for a while, but then I heard about a couple who appeared in Calgary right around the time Victoria would have arrived if she had kept traveling north. A couple with no past, no history, who seemed to have sprung fully formed into existence." He leaned closer. "A man named Zachary Sullivan and his wife Violet." "That is quite a story," Zachary said, his voice hard. "But Violet is my wife. We met in Montana before coming up here." "You are chasing ghosts. Then you won't mind if I meet her," Marcus said, "just to confirm she is not my Victoria." Zachary's hands clenched on the reins. "I mind very much. My wife does not need to be bothered by strangers." "I am not a stranger," Marcus said softly. "I am her husband. And in case you were thinking of running again, I should tell you that I have already spoken to the sheriff. He is very interested in the reward money, and he is willing to help me search every ranch in the area if necessary." Zachary felt trapped. If he ran, it would only confirm Marcus's suspicions and the sheriff would hunt them down. But if he did nothing, if he let Marcus see Violet, it was over. "My wife is not your Victoria," Zachary said, putting every ounce of conviction he could into his voice. "I am sorry your wife disappeared, truly. But harassing innocent people is not going to bring her back." "Then prove it," Marcus challenged. "Bring your wife to town tomorrow. Let me see her face. If she is not Victoria, I will apologize and leave you alone." Zachary wanted to refuse, but he knew that would only make things worse. "Fine. Tomorrow noon at the sheriff's office." He rode home in a state of near panic, his mind spinning with possible solutions. When he told Violet what had happened, she broke down. "It is over," she sobbed. "He has won. He will take me back and there is nothing we can do." "No," Zachary said fiercely, pulling her into his arms. "I will not let that happen. Never, do you hear me? Never." But as he held her, he honestly did not know what they were going to do. That night, after the children were asleep, they sat at the kitchen table trying to figure out a plan. Running was not an option, not with 3 children and the sheriff already alerted. Fighting Marcus legally would be difficult since technically, Victoria was still married to him under American law, even if she was considered dead. "There has to be a way," Zachary said, his hand covering Violet's on the table. "We have not come this far just to give up now." "Maybe I should just go with him," Violet said dully. "Maybe that is the only way to keep you and the children safe. He will hurt you if I resist. You know he will." "Absolutely not," Zachary said. "That is not even a possibility." They talked in circles for hours until finally Violet spoke quietly. "What if Victoria Thornton really is dead?" she said. Zachary looked at her, not understanding. "Think about it," Violet continued, a spark of hope entering her eyes. "Marcus has been looking for Victoria for 5 years. Everyone thinks she died in that blizzard. What if we could prove she is dead?" "How?" Zachary asked. "We need a body," Violet said, "or at least evidence of one. Something concrete enough that Marcus would have to accept it and stop looking." It was Zachary's turn to think. "The creek," he said slowly. "When the ice breaks up in spring, it gets violent. Things get swept away. What if Victoria's body was found in that creek? What if she had been trapped under the ice all winter and finally surfaced?" "But there is no body," Violet pointed out. "No," Zachary agreed. "But maybe there is evidence of one. Some personal effects, maybe some bones that could be from anyone but we say they are Victoria's." It was a risky plan, full of holes, but it was all they had. They worked through the night preparing. Violet had kept one dress from her old life, hidden in the bottom of a trunk. They would need that. They also needed bones, and Zachary went out before dawn and retrieved the skeleton of a deer that had died on their property the previous winter. It was gruesome work, but necessary. They put the bones and the dress in a sack, and Zachary rode out before sunrise to plant them along the creek bank, in a place where the spring floods might have deposited a body. Then he rode into Calgary, arriving just before noon. Marcus was already at the sheriff's office, looking impatient. "Where is your wife?" Marcus demanded. "She is at home with our children," Zachary said. "But before you drag her into this, there is something you need to see." He told them about finding the remains along the creek bank that morning, about the dress and the bones. The sheriff agreed to ride out and investigate, and Marcus came along, his face tight with tension. When they reached the spot, Zachary pointed out the sack he had placed there. The sheriff opened it carefully and pulled out the tattered dress, then the bones. "This looks like it could have been here a while," the sheriff said. "Ice and animals would have scattered things." Marcus took the dress with shaking hands. Zachary watched his face, trying to gauge his reaction. Would he recognize it? Would he believe this was really Victoria? "This is hers," Marcus said finally, his voice hoarse. "I bought her this dress for our first anniversary." He looked at the bones, his expression unreadable. "So she has been dead all along." "Looks that way," the sheriff said. "I am sorry for your loss." Zachary held his breath, waiting to see if Marcus would accept it, or if he would demand more proof. The older man stood there for a long moment, holding the dress, then finally nodded slowly. "I want to bury her properly," Marcus said. "In Virginia City, in the family plot." "Of course," the sheriff said. "We will help you arrange transport." Over the next few days, Zachary and Violet lived in constant fear that Marcus would change his mind, that he would demand to see Violet before leaving. But Marcus seemed lost in his own grief. Whether real or feigned, Zachary could not tell. He arranged for the bones to be placed in a coffin and prepared to take them back to Virginia City. The night before Marcus was set to leave, he came to the Sullivan ranch. Zachary met him outside, not wanting him anywhere near Violet or the children. "I wanted to thank you," Marcus said, and he sounded genuinely sad, "for helping me find closure. For 5 years I have wondered, hoped, searched. Now I can finally let her rest." Zachary nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Marcus looked out over the ranch at the house with lights glowing warmly in the windows. "You have a good life here, a family. Hold on to that. Don't let anything take it from you." Then he mounted his horse and rode away, and Zachary watched him go with a mixture of relief and residual fear. It was over. It had to be over. Violet emerged from the house once Marcus was gone. "Did he believe it?" she asked. "I think so," Zachary said, pulling her close. "I think we are finally free." They held each other in the twilight, both of them trembling with the aftermath of fear and relief. The weeks that followed were tense as they waited to see if Marcus would return, if somehow their deception would be uncovered. But as spring turned to summer and there was no word, no sign of him, they slowly began to believe they were truly safe. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such upheaval. The ranch work continued, the children grew, and Zachary and Violet found their way back to the peace they had built. One evening, about 6 months after Marcus had left, they received a letter forwarded through a lawyer. It was brief and to the point. Marcus Thornton had remarried and wanted to inform them that he would not be pursuing any further inquiries about his first wife's death. He considered the matter closed. Violet read the letter 3 times, then burned it in the fire. "It is really over," she said, watching the paper curl and blacken. "He has moved on. We are safe." Zachary wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We are safe," he agreed, "and we are together. That is all that matters." The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered, and they added 2 more children to their family. Another daughter they named Helen, and a son they named James. Their home was full of love and laughter, and Zachary and Violet grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. Samuel grew into a strong young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Rose was clever and fierce, reminding Zachary of Violet in her determination. Daniel was gentle and kind, always helping his younger siblings. Helen was adventurous, constantly exploring and getting into mischief. And James, the youngest, was quiet and thoughtful. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Zachary and Violet rode out to the place where he had planted the false evidence that had finally freed them from Marcus's pursuit. The creek was running full and clear, and wildflowers grew along the banks. "You ever regret it?" Zachary asked as they sat on the grass. "Giving up your old life, your real name?" Violet considered the question. "Victoria Elmore died in that snowstorm," she said finally. "And Violet Sullivan was born. I don't regret that at all. Victoria was a victim, trapped and afraid. Violet is free and loved and happy." She took his hand. "You gave me that gift, Zachary. You saved my life, and then you gave me a life worth living." "You did the same for me," Zachary said. "Before I found you, I was just going through the motions. Working, existing, but not really living. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. You gave me a family." They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. As they rode back to the ranch, they could see their children playing in the yard, waiting for them. Samuel was teaching Daniel how to rope a fence post. Rose had Helen on her hip, spinning her around while the little girl giggled, and James sat on the porch steps, reading a book. It was a perfect moment, the kind that makes up a life. And as Zachary helped Violet down from her horse and they walked hand in hand toward their home, he thought about how different things might have been if he had ridden past that day, if he had listened when she said to leave her, if he had not said those two words that changed everything. Never again. He had meant it then, and he meant it still. Never again would he abandon someone who needed help. Never again would he walk away from love. Never again would he take for granted the precious gift of family and home. The children ran to greet them, all talking at once about their day. Violet laughed and tried to answer everyone while Zachary just watched, his heart full to bursting with gratitude and love. That night, after the children were asleep, Zachary and Violet lay in bed talking quietly. "You think they will ever know the truth?" Violet asked. "About how we met?" "About Marcus." Zachary was quiet for a moment. "Maybe someday when they are older and can understand. But for now, let them just know that we love each other and we love them. The rest is just details." "Not just details," Violet said. "It is our story, how we found each other. How love saved us both." "Then that is what we will tell them eventually," Zachary agreed. "A love story, the best kind, the kind that is real and messy and hard one." Violet snuggled closer to him. "I love you, Zachary Sullivan, more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too, Violet Sullivan, more than words can say." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, safe and warm and loved. Outside, the Canadian night was clear and full of stars, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled at the moon. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows as years do. They lost Mrs. Fitzpatrick, who had become like a grandmother to their children. They celebrated weddings as their older children grew up and started families of their own. Samuel married a sweet girl from Calgary and took over more of the ranch work as Zachary's body began showing the wear of decades of hard labor. Rose shocked everyone by deciding to become a doctor, one of the first women in the territory to pursue medicine. Daniel became a skilled carpenter, building houses throughout the region. Through it all, Zachary and Violet remained each other's constant. They had the usual arguments and disagreements that come with marriage, but they never went to bed angry and they never took each other for granted. They had both known what it was like to be without love, to be in a relationship built on control and fear, and that knowledge made them treasure what they had even more. When Zachary turned 65, his joints aching and his hair completely gray, he decided it was time to step back from the daily ranch work. Samuel was more than capable of running things, and Zachary wanted to spend his remaining years simply enjoying Violet's company. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains, holding hands like young lovers. Sometimes their grandchildren would visit, and the house would once again be full of noise and chaos, and Zachary and Violet would smile at each other, remembering when it was their own children causing such happy havoc. On a warm summer evening in 1910, 26 years after they had first met in that Montana blizzard, Zachary had a stroke. It was not severe enough to kill him immediately, but it left him weakened and confused. Violet nursed him devotedly, rarely leaving his side, and slowly he recovered some of his strength and clarity. But they both knew his time was growing short. One night, as Violet helped him to bed, Zachary took her hand. "I need you to know," he said, his voice slower than it used to be but still clear, "that finding you in that snow was the best thing that ever happened to me. Every day with you has been a gift." Violet's eyes filled with tears. "Don't talk like you are saying goodbye." "I am not ready to say goodbye yet," Zachary assured her. "But when the time comes, I need you to know you made my life complete. You and our children and this life we built. I have no regrets, Violet. None." "Neither do I," Violet said, kissing his forehead. "You saved me, Zachary. In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Zachary corrected gently. He lived for 3 more years, years filled with quiet contentment. He got to meet several more grandchildren and even one great-grandchild. He watched Rose graduate from medical school and open her own practice. He saw James publish his first book of poetry. He gave Helen away at her wedding to a kind young man who reminded Zachary of himself at that age. And through it all, Violet was by his side. Still beautiful to him, despite the gray in her hair and the lines on her face. Still the woman he had pulled from the snow and refused to leave behind. Zachary Sullivan died peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1913, with Violet holding his hand. He was 70 years old and had lived a full, rich life. The funeral was well attended, as he had been a respected member of the community for nearly 30 years. People shared stories of his kindness, his integrity, his love for his family. But the story that meant the most was the one Violet told at the graveside, her voice strong despite her grief. 29 years ago, she said, looking out at all the faces gathered there, I was at the lowest point of my life. I had given up hope. I was ready to die. And then this man found me and refused to let me go. He said 2 words that changed everything. Never again. He meant he would never again leave someone in need, and he lived by those words every day of his life. She looked down at the coffin. Zachary Sullivan was the best man I ever knew. He was brave and kind and loving. He gave me a life worth living and children worth raising and love worth cherishing. And I will spend the rest of my days grateful that he found me in that snow and refused to listen when I told him to leave me. Violet lived for another 15 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She remained sharp and vital well into her 80s, still teaching occasionally and always ready with a story or a piece of advice. When she died in 1928 at the age of 84, she was buried next to Zachary under a shared headstone. The inscription was simple but perfect. Zachary and Violet Sullivan. They found each other in the snow and built a lifetime of love. Never again did they leave each other. Their descendants continued to work the ranch for generations, always knowing the story of how it all began. How their great-grandfather had found their great-grandmother dying in a blizzard and refused to leave her. How he had said, "Never again," and meant it. How they had run away together and built a new life in a new land. How their love had been strong enough to overcome fear and danger and the ghosts of the past. It became a family legend, passed down through the years. A reminder that love can be found in the darkest moments. That choosing to help someone, to refuse to leave them behind, can change not just their life but your own. That sometimes the most important word you can say is never when it comes to giving up on someone. The ranch still stands today, over 100 years later, still in the Sullivan family. And on snowy winter nights, when the wind howls across the Alberta plains, the family gathers around the fire and tells the story again. About the cowboy who found a woman collapsed in the snow. About how she said, "Leave me," and he said, "Never again." About how that moment of compassion and courage led to a lifetime of love. And somewhere, perhaps, the spirits of Zachary and Violet Sullivan smile, knowing their story lives on. Knowing that their love, forged in that moment of crisis and refined through years of commitment and partnership, still inspires those who come after them. It was, truly, a love story for the ages. Not because it was easy or simple, but because it was real. Because 2 people found each other when they needed each other most and chose, every single day, to keep choosing each other. Through danger and hardship, through joy and sorrow, through all the mundane and magnificent moments that make up a life. They had 5 children together, 15 grandchildren, and more great and great-great-grandchildren than anyone bothered to count. But more than that, they had each other. And in the end, that was everything. The snow still falls on the Alberta plains every winter, covering the land in white. And the ranch still stands, a testament to what can be built when two people refuse to give up on each other or themselves. When one person says, "Leave me," and another says, "Never again," miracles can happen. This is the legacy of Zachary and Violet Sullivan. This is their story. A story of survival and redemption, of courage and commitment, of a love that conquered fear and created something beautiful and lasting. A story that began in the snow and ended only when their mortal lives did, though in truth their love lives on in every descendant who bears their name and carries their story forward. It is a story worth telling, a story worth remembering. A story of two souls who found each other in the wilderness and refused to let go. Never again, Zachary had said, and he had kept that promise until his last breath. Never again did he leave someone in need. Never again did he abandon the people he loved. Never again did he take for granted the gift of another day with Violet by his side. And Violet, for her part, had found the courage to live again, to love again, to believe that she deserved happiness and safety and respect. She had gone from victim to survivor to thriver, and it all started the moment a cowboy refused to ride past a woman dying in the snow. This is how great loves begin. Not always with grand gestures or perfect circumstances, but sometimes in the midst of crisis and fear. When one person reaches out a hand and another chooses to take it, when someone refuses to give up, on themselves or on another. The Sullivan family still tells this story because it matters, because it reminds them that love is worth fighting for, that family is worth protecting, that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. And every winter, when the first snow falls on the Alberta ranch that Zachary and Violet built together, their descendants pause in their work and remember. They remember the cowboy and the woman in the snow. They remember "Leave me" and "Never again." They remember that their existence, their family, their legacy all stems from one moment of compassion in a blizzard. That is the power of choosing love over fear, of choosing action over apathy, of refusing to give up on someone, even when they have given up on themselves. That is the story of Zachary and Violet Sullivan. And it is a story that will be told as long as there are people to tell it, as long as snow falls on the Canadian plains, as long as love exists in the world. Never again, he had said, and he had meant it.